and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on podcastufo.com. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and we're live from a mountaintop in Maine. We have an interesting guest for you this evening, Jeff Willis. He's not a relative. His last name has an ES, and we're going to be talking about UFOs over Phoenix. Before our guest, however, we have Alejandro Rojas coming up with the news in just a minute. And I want to thank all the listeners who support the show. If you can't support the show, we still appreciate you. And if you want to listen to the entire show for free, all you have to do is come to podcastufo.com every Wednesday evening at 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or and that's the same as New York City. Or you can go to PSN Radio at the same time. And we're also, as a podcast, over at the Dark Matter Digital Network every Thursday at 10 to midnight Eastern Standard Time. How you doing, Alejandro?
I am doing well. How are you?
Good. I've heard you've had some scorching heat out that way.
Yeah, you notice I haven't been mentioning the weather because I can't brag about the weather anymore. Most of the year, I can brag and be like, oh, hey, what's the weather out there? It's snowing, huh? Bummer. It's perfect out here.
Yeah.
But no, it was perfect weather up until a few days ago. And I think that Mother Nature or whoever is in charge of the heat meter out there in the universe just switched it on hardcore a couple days ago. And we went from, low 90s, which may be hot in some areas, but is not bad here. It's like perfect, up to 110, boom. And we're now in the summer. We're in the hotness. And it's like the difference is there's like no reprieve. You can't go anywhere but inside to the AC because you walk into the shade and, it's just less hot, but it's still 100 and plus. So it's still very hot. You're just out of the sun. So you're going to survive for a few more minutes. And then a breeze is no reprieve at all. That was a shocking thing when I moved out here and experienced it. When there's a breeze, you're thinking, oh, this is going to be nice, a breeze. In most places, a breeze cools you down. No, a breeze is just like a hairdryer.
Yeah, hot air furnace.
Being blown on your face out here. Yeah, so it is, we're into the summer heat now. So we're living that life and inside looking out our windows at the still looks pretty. But, you don't want to be out there for too long.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what they did, 50 years ago in that area, when there was no air conditioning.
Yeah. Well, I've been down to Tucson and the area, what is at the OK Corral.
Right, yeah.
And they wore a lot of clothes back then, the big jackets, the wool. And I've been out there for like the anniversary of the shootout and everything, and where they do the reenactment.
Yeah.
I don't know how those actors wear it. Yeah, so you've been out there, let alone those people back then with no AC. I don't know how they did it in that heat. It's amazing to me. Or there are lots of Native American tribes in this area.
Oh, yeah.
How they did it, I think that they did stay inside most and moved around mostly at night. But they had little earth huts out here that they would build. And I think of that often. How the heck did people survive before AC?
Yeah. It must have been just getting used to. They just a way of life, more or less.
Yeah.
For like the Native Americans, stuff like that. Well, I think we're here to talk about UFOs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can talk about that too.
Okay. And is there anything going on?
No.
I didn't.
Yeah, actually we do have some interesting stories.
Okay.
So a couple of things here. First of all, one of the videos, and it's a pretty video. I guess that's one of the reasons I like talking about it. But there's a little bit of controversy. Not everybody agrees about this video. But this is an Ohio video that was taken recently. And, if you read the description, these people sound very intelligent, and their report is very well written, whereas many times they're not. But this was May 27th in the town of Rudolph, and this couple at about 9:30 p.m. Saw a object in the sky. The wife said that her husband looked over his shoulder and said, "What the hell is that?" And they said they saw directly over them what appeared to be something very large. But they described it like this. They described it as a bright, pulsating white light that changed to a faint, glowing red light and then back to white. And that this light was inside of a translucent square. So the MUFON investigator, who was Donovan Lee, did some investigation and closed it as an unknown, although he described this as the color being white but glowing to a reddish hue, and he said it was like it was a burning flame. Well, a burning flame inside of a translucent square to me sounds exactly like it sounds like a Chinese lantern. But he felt that it wasn't. He felt it was moving too slow to be a kite or a balloon, and that too fast to be a plane. He said it was not moving in the direction of the wind, but wind can change at different elevations. So this person, the investigator, and others feel pretty confidently that it's not a Chinese lantern. And I think you said you watched the video too, and you felt that it was too hard to tell. But the description very much sounds like one. But I think it's a neat video. I mean, it's well done, and the aesthetics of the video are nice.
Yeah. Now, did anyone come up with the theory that it could be a red-nosed reindeer?
No,
Rudolph.
It's not the season for that. But you're right.
You said Rudolph.
The town. The town is Rudolph.
Wow. So, sorry, I had to go there.
I don't know much about the town of Rudolph, Ohio, but I don't believe that the name has any, history related to the red-nosed reindeer.
Okay.
In fact, I know people get upset that we can be so skeptical on this show, but I am one of those people who is very skeptical that Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer existed at all.
Well, there's no hard evidence.
No, I think that's total mythology. I just don't think that he is real.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get a lot of hate mail about this.
Yeah, you are. I don't believe in Santa Claus. Never did either. How about that?
Wow.
Ooh. There's dropped a bomb.
Yeah.
So there's another video, though, or photos that are a little more interesting. These are from Grass Valley, California, around the same time, also late May. And this was also later in the day, although you can tell there is daylight out. The person said it was 7:30 p.m. This was May 28th, so just a couple days after the other video. And they said they saw this object in the sky, so they took some pictures of it. Actually, this person also, is very well written. They seem very intelligent. This person told their roommate, "Hey, look at that thing in the sky." And it was a roommate who went and grabbed the camera and took some pictures. And they took these pictures and they blew them up, and they just couldn't tell what they were. They talked about how in 3 of the pictures they got fuzzy objects. And I feel that those are probably due to the camera being very out of focus. However, 2 of the pictures are very in focus, but the object in each of the images is completely different. One of them, is an oblong kind of a taller kind of thing, almost like a lipstick bottle flying in the air or something like that. And then the other one, I don't even know how to describe this, some kind of lampshade.
That's a good description.
Yeah, I just came up with that one, and finally I came up with a description, kind of a lampshade, like the ones with the little balls hanging from the bottom, like little poofy kind of fabric, like pom-pom little things. And so, but yeah, they feel that this object changed shapes while it was flying along in the sky there. So some interesting photos.
Yeah, that is really, really strange, but also not like something we haven't heard before.
Right, not unprecedented. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, are saying that they totally shift. I don't want to say shape shift, but they do change like a formation and fade in and out and all that stuff.
Yeah. So they said that the light, the intensity of the light, increased, and they felt it was reflecting light. So the reflectivity increased and decreased. So I guess that would be the possibility of balloons tumbling in the sky. And in fact, I think an amazing video, a great video, which we know was balloons actually, was one posted by one of Jaime Maussan's guys. Oh. So this is what happened. This is how it happened with me. I might have told you this story. I don't know. It has to do with Ruben Uriarte, who's a MUFON investigator in California who also does work in Mexico. But they went out with Jaime and their crew, and they in Mexico City, and they were way far away, and they launched a set of balloons. And they were going to videotape them from this rooftop. Well, one of the guys sees the balloons. He's like, "Oh my gosh!" He starts filming it, and then they told him, "That's not a UFO. Those are balloons. We launched those so we can film them to see what they look like, so we can match them up against some of the other videos." This is for a TV show.
Do you have like a pet squirrel or something?
No,
I'm hearing like little feet.
Oh, sorry. It might be the table here. Me bumping.
Oh, it could be. Yeah. Okay.
So this guy posted the video as a shape-changing UFO, even though they had told him it was a balloon. And so it went viral, of course.
Yeah.
And the video, really looks like a solid object changing shape. It's pretty weird. The video is great. It was really weird. So I saw the video, and because it was in Mexico, I immediately got a hold of Ruben, and I said, "Hey, have you seen this yet?" And he laughed. He called me and he said, "Oh my gosh." He's like, "I can't believe that they posted this." He's like, "These are the balloons we launched when we were in Mexico City." And he knows that. Why is he posting this? So, and to Jaime's defense, it wasn't Jaime who posted it. It was one of the guys that works with him. But, so balloons can look kind of weird, although I'm not sure that's what this is, because this does appear to be one solid object. Doesn't appear to be multiple, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's an odd duck. It's an odd duck. Well, I think it's time to call it a night. Feed your squirrel, and we'll see.
Okay, yeah.
Talk to you next week.
My invisible squirrel in here.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Yep, you have a great week, and we will talk to you later.
All right. Thanks a lot. So a little bit about our guest tonight. Jeff Willis has been researching UFOs and related phenomena for over 25 years. His initial interest in aliens didn't start with a simple UFO sighting. He's been having sightings of UFOs and other odd experiences since 1975. In 1987, at the age of 17, he moved to Phoenix from Seattle with his family. Skywatching became his full-time activity after getting his video camera in 1995. He's been able to get over 250 hours of solid UFO video. Jeff Willis was one of the co-creators of the UFO Trip. It became the History Channel's UFO Hunters TV show. His footage has been featured in many programs, including History Channel's Ancient Aliens, Disney's Race to Witch Mountain, and Dan Aykroyd Unplugged on UFOs, and many more. All right, so hang in for the quick music break. We'll be right back with Jeff Willis. Jeff Willis, how
Hello?
are you?
Hey, how you doing? That's a great music intro. I thought I was stuck inside of a Pink Floyd video or something.
That's by Kerry Lloyd Whitehouse. He's a fan of the show. He's in Ireland. Produces movies for music for movies, and he did a bunch of music for us. So yeah,
that was great.
Yeah,
that was
thanks.
Excellent.
Hey, well, welcome to the show, first of all, and we are not related, by the way. For some reason, your relatives decided to put an E in your last name.
Right.
Yeah. Where'd they go wrong, right?
Well, yeah, I know. Every time someone asks me, what's your name, and I tell them, and they try to, they have to write it down for some reason. They always spell it with an IS instead of an ES.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah. So, first of all, you are in Phoenix, and I believe I saw you a couple of years ago out there at the conference at the UFO Congress. But how did you first get involved in the UFO topic to begin with? What was your fascination?
Well, that happened from some experiences that I had, and when I was about 5 years old in 1975. We'll, start way at the very beginning, I guess. And what happened was I was lying in bed, about ready to go to sleep, and the lights were turned off, and the door was cracked open just a hair. And as I was lying there, about maybe 5 minutes later, after I was lying there, all of a sudden I felt something grab my hand, and all of a sudden something was holding my hand. Now, it felt like a regular person's hand as far as I remember, and I wasn't immediately scared or startled because I thought maybe I just, when you're a kid, and when you're an adult, you try to explain it away at first to try to come up with an explanation. What is this? So the first thought I had was my mom come in the room when I had my eyes closed and was holding my hand for some reason, like lying there with me. And then right after that immediate thought, I saw her walk by the door, on the outside of the door, on the other side, in the other room, walking around. And so once I saw that, that's when I got scared. And I gathered enough courage to, as fast as I could, reach over and turn on the lamp that was on the right-hand side of the bed. And so I did that, and as soon as I did, and the light flooded the room, the pressure released off my hand, and there was nothing there at all, absolutely nothing. So at the very young age of like 5 or 6 years old, I realized that there was something else besides the physical realm that we're all here in. Obviously there was something there. Something was holding my hand, and they're not there when the lights turned on. So this is something that is interfering into our world that we can't see, obviously. So I was brought into it with questions at a very young age. And how that progressed was when I went to kindergarten, they decided to take the group, the very first day of kindergarten, they took a group of us to the elementary school library, which was a couple rooms down the hall, and they were, showing us all these books, and now you're in this elementary school, you can come here and check out books any day of the week and take them home. And they were like, okay, so why don't you guys all spread out and grab some books so we can check them out. And you got to remember, this was kindergarten through 6th grade, I believe. And so they had older kids, 6th grader books and, bigger words and stuff like that. So I was looking through the entire library as a kindergartner, and I come across a section of books that I just grabbed off the shelves. I was like, I got to know about this. I mean, because of the incident that happened before, I came to the counter and I had a book called UFO Photographs, and it had the different saucer shapes that people have saw. And another book that I was trying to check out at the time was called Beyond Earth: Man's Contact with UFOs, and it had some abduction cases in there. I think one of the very first abduction cases was in the book was the Travis Walton case that came later, but also was featured in that book was the Betty and Barney Hill case, which came 10 or 12 years prior to the Travis Walton thing. And so I also had a Bigfoot book I was trying to check out. And so when I brought these books to the thing, they looked at me and they were like, you can't read these. You're barely learning to read, and these are like 6th grade books. What are you trying to do? Why are you interested in this stuff, and why are you trying to read this? And basically I just told her, I wanted these books. I want to check these books out. So I brought them home, and my parents were puzzled too. They were like, why do you want to know what this is? And that was one of the first times I was able to ask the question. I was like, well, what is? I want to know what a UFO is, and I want to know what's inside of a UFO, and please answer that question. And my mom was like, well, I don't know, and maybe a robot, I guess. And that didn't really satisfy me. So I was like, and I want to know what was in my room. Not too long ago, a few months ago, that was holding my hand, and I asked her that. The next morning, I asked her what that was when the incident happened as well, and she didn't have an answer for me. She said it was probably a guardian angel, or that was her. That's what she said. So that didn't really satisfy me either. So I was asking again later, and I had these books, and I was trying to figure all this stuff out. So that kind of a long answer to your question, but that's basically how it started.
Wow, I that's probably a record for someone starting that young looking at UFO books. I've never heard anyone that young. That's amazing.
Well, what was weird is later on in life when the book, I think it was like, some of the very first material to touch on some of the abduction cases and some of the commonalities among them was that book called Missing Time by Bud Hopkins, which came out around 1980. And I bought the book, and I looked at it and read it, and I was amazed to see that there was a lot of people in that book that claimed to have abduction experiences, where they all were saying the same thing, that it was starting out when they were like 5 or 6 years old. And it was like a common thread among a lot of them. And I remember reading some of Whitley Strieber's books later, too, that he said that he believed that his started around when he was like 5 or 6 years old. And so I was thinking, is this a common thread where the people that are being contacted are being contacted at that young of an age? And am I part of this group of people? And, all these questions led me to basically buy almost every single UFO book on the subject I can find or ever get my hands on. And so I have this huge library of UFO books, and I've read probably like 90% of them. And, my library hasn't gotten much bigger since 1995. When I got my first video camera, to try to videotape these things, because out of all these books that I read and all of the UFO cases that I ever read about, it never really told me the truth. Are they really here? Can I see it for myself? We're never going to believe a book or someone's story unless we see it ourselves, right? So that was my next mission, was to videotape them, get them on tape, to prove it to myself. I mean, I already knew because of the contacts from, the different incidences that I had, that there was something that was trying to contact me, or, I've been physically touched by them, so to speak, and I know that there was something there. So, whether it was a ghost, an alien, whatever it was, I want to know. So it just basically drove me to the UFO subject, because later on, when I was about 7 years old, I saw a UFO, which was like a triangle-shaped UFO over the apartment complex that I lived at when I was 7. And this was in broad daylight, and there was 3 of them. And I remember they were small. They weren't like what you hear these reports of these huge triangles. Mm-hmm. These were like smaller triangles. There was 3 of them. And instead of flying like the point would fly in that direction first, it was flying with the V-like shape backward. It looked like a backwards flying, what you would think would be flying this way, with the point in the front. It wasn't flying that way. It's flying with the V in the front. Mm-hmm. And so that's what startled me. At first, I thought it was an airplane, and then when the 3 of them got closer, I was like, that's not an airplane. That's from that book that I had. And that's one of those UFOs. And so I, was trying to relate the experience in the bedroom with the UFOs that I saw, to try to put those together. along with the books of telling people that, in the book explaining that people have been contacted by these UFOs and the beings, close encounters of the third kind. I'd already learned that phrase by the time I was 7, which is the description of a UFO in close proximity to a person within like 50 yards or something like that, and where they see beings outside the craft. So I was always familiar with the lingo and all this stuff at this young age, and also I saw what I can only describe as a low UFO over some houses when I was 10 years old. And this UFO looked like the old New York City water towers. It looked like kind of cone-shaped and round, with like a round oval, like oval or round shape like a UFO on the bottom, but with a slight cone on the top. And this was just kind of wobbling over a house. I come up on it over a hill with my bike and saw it hovering over a house, rocking back and forth. And I watched it in amazement for like what seemed like a while, but it was only probably 2 minutes. And then it just started taking off over some trees nearby. Like it started flying in a direction where it went over a green belt where there were some trees. And I lost it because, the trees eventually will, you can't see it. So I went down this trail looking for it. And this is when I had my first missing time experience. Is after I went down that trail looking for this thing, I don't remember anything until like about 7:30. This happened about maybe 3 in the afternoon, and I don't remember anything until probably like 7 at the next night. I remember it was getting dark and I couldn't find my bike. Like all of a sudden I was on a trail and I couldn't find my bike, and it was dark. And then I finally found it, and I started riding home. And when I got home, my parents, I remember, were mad because I should have been home a long time ago. And I couldn't remember. I didn't really, look at it. Before Missing Time was in the UFO books and all that stuff, you didn't really hear about it other than the Barney and Betty Hill case and maybe the Travis Walton case. But I wasn't really as much familiar with those cases to really know what Missing Time was, and I didn't really feel like, I knew that there was some time passed and it was darker and I found my bike, but when you're a kid, you don't really think about it that too much. I did a little bit, but then later on, after I learned it was part of the UFO phenomenon, that's when I really started to focus on that, did I have missing time? And it was so finely cut into, the regular time that you barely miss it. Maybe it was only maybe an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours, I don't know. But I was late getting home and my parents weren't too happy about it.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about it being a retrospective, that they look back and it takes a little bit of looking back to realize that there was actually missing time. That's what I hear a lot on those cases. So do you think the incident you had in the bedroom is what started your fascination with why you walked through the library and grabbed those books, or do you think you would have anyway? Yeah. It was?
I think it was, but it's hard to tell if I would have anyways, because later on down the road I had a couple more bedroom experiences in the future, but I was never able to actually see the face of what it was until just even like most recently, I think about I would say it was like about 2012 or 2013. I was finally able to see the glimpse of the face of what this thing was. And I don't know if it was the same thing that had come into the bedroom previous times, because I can count them on one hand. I've probably had like 5 bedroom experiences that I can remember, that I can know that I was like conscious when it happened type of thing, where I can, relate to it. Now, who's to say that when you're at your most deepest sleep in the middle of the night that they don't come and do something? I don't know if that happened, but I do remember the times that did happen and what happened. So what I saw before 2012 or 2013 was always a dark figure where you can't see what it is for a split second. before you like go into a missing time experience and then wake up and nothing's there, or wake up in the morning and then slightly remember, oh, right before I went to sleep, I remember seeing like some being standing at the foot of the bed. One time I saw two of them standing at the foot of the bed. But to fast forward to the 2012, 2013 incident, was in the middle of the day, like 12 in the afternoon. I was feeling kind of tired, so I laid down for like a short nap. And all of a sudden I felt like when you're lying on your stomach, what you would feel if like a person put both of their hands on your back and start pushing you onto the bed, like pushing with force, where you can feel somebody pushing down on your back. And that kind of like woke me up out of the sleep, but I was like paralyzed. I couldn't move at all. And I can feel this pressure pushing me down further into the bed. And I was like, well, I can't move. I can feel somebody pushing on my back. I don't know what this is. And then I thought that for just a second. And then all of a sudden I related it back to all these other experiences. And then I thought to myself, okay, I know exactly what this is. And so I was able to break free of the paralysis and get my eyes wide open during the same second that I felt being pushed on my back, and I was able to flip around on my back to see the face of this thing for the first time. It looked like exactly what they always describe in these books. It was, but to see it, you could see the texture. It was like gray. The skin was gray, like they always say. The skin, though, and the face, you can see was like the texture was like moist. It had like moisture. The skin was like moist, like maybe a frog, like the texture of a frog. And you can see like veins under the skin, like black or like, gray, like type of like, compression of what were like some type of like vein. I don't know if they were veins or not, but there was like a pattern of something under the skin of like a tight skin over like veins that are popping out. And it had the gray, it had the eyes were like just one black pupil, and they weren't like oversized like a lot of they described. It was like bigger than normal, but it wasn't like huge like how they describe it. And the thing is I only saw it for like less than even a second. I was only able to see it for like 1 second, and as soon as I blinked and opened my eyes back up, as quick as a blink, it was gone.
Wow!
And so it was over my bed. When I rolled over my back, I saw it its face right there, and then I didn't see the rest of its body. It just maybe the shoulders of it, and then within one blink, it was gone. And so, that was the only time I've ever seen what they look like, and I don't know if that was the same thing that, has been coming around all these years. And I don't even know if you can relate these bedroom beings or these whatever they are. I don't even know if you can relate them to aerial phenomenon, because a lot of times when people see this aspect of the UFO experience, or the abduction experience, so to speak, when they have the bedroom visitation of an alien, most of those experiences, no one ever sees UFO with those experiences. There's other experiences where you see the UFO with the being, like the Betty and Barney Hill case or the Travis Walton case. Those are two of when I look at the UFO abduction phenomenon, I put them in those two different categories. There's the cases where you see the UFO with the being, and then there's the cases where they never see the UFO, where they only see the being in the room, or then there's a little of both. When you see the beam and you're being levitated out of a beam into a UFO, there's that category as well. And that way you finally see both, but it starts off in the room and then you're levitated into a UFO, and then you see the UFO after you see the beam. So there's a couple different categories there that I like to look at when it comes to the actual entities or ET or whatever you want to call it.
Now, we have a regression therapist in the chat room, so she probably would want me to ask this question. Have you ever thought of having regression hypnotherapy?
Well, yeah, back in like 1992, I believe it was 1992, I seen on the, some UFO documentaries, I think like Sightings, a couple different TV shows of it was Sightings, and I also saw her on, I believe, like Geraldo Rivera or whatever, was the famous hypnotherapist Yvonne Smith from California. Mm-hmm. So around the early 90s, I saw her talking about this sort of stuff, and I was like thinking, wow, you know, she's hypnotizing these people just like Bud Hopkins. She's friends with Bud Hopkins. She obviously knows what she's doing. So I contacted her about it, and then she referred me to a therapist in the Phoenix area that works with regression with abductees and stuff. And I never went further than that with contacting another person about it and going under hypnosis, because I bought this book by it was like a 93, maybe a year later, after I started looking into this hypnosis thing. I bought a book by Edith. I can't really recall the name. I can't remember right offhand, but it was a book about self-hypnosis. They taught you how to do it yourself, like to hypnotize yourself and look for memories. And so I did it, and I tried to recall one incident, and I started to see in my mind, in my subconscious mind, started to show me memories about it that I couldn't remember before I started the hypnosis process. And right when I started getting the information that I couldn't remember consciously, I quit doing it because I started getting scared, and I didn't want to continue down that path. Mm-hmm. I was like, wait a minute, why can't I remember this before I go into hypnosis? And so that part of it kind of freaked me out, and I pretty much stopped. So I didn't pursue it with anybody else or try any more self hypnosis or anything like that. So, I mean, I'm open to it now, maybe now, but at the time I wasn't.
I'm not sure if something like that happened to me, if I'd really want to explore it. I know this has come up on the show before, but I asked Travis Walton the same question basically, and he said he did it once and he'll never do it again. He doesn't want to know anymore, basically. So
right, and that was my experience with it, because once your brain is starting to show you memories that you couldn't remember until you got into this trance state, you might not want to continue down that road. I mean, once you open the door. Now, once, if I was to go into hypnosis and look at a different experience and it started turning out the same way, then I might want to just stop the session too, But I don't know, it's weird. It's weird for your subconscious. It's the same thing, it's used in a court of law. Some people, they do something bad and a car speeds down the street and you're the only one there to stand on the sidewalk. So they take you and the police do a interview with you about it, and then they come to the conclusion that maybe he might remember the license plate under hypnosis. So you go under hypnosis and all of a sudden you can remember that license plate just like you were standing there staring right at it. I mean, and that kind of freaks you out after that. You're like, wow, your subconscious is taking in a heck of a lot more than you are really aware of, and this can be accessed.
Yeah, I've heard said that you kind of put everything in little file boxes, little moments and things like that, which can be accessed. Which is, I don't know if it can be accessed through hypnotherapy, but it's still that your brain really does capture a lot of things. Now, I see that you moved to Phoenix in 1995, and the first thing I think of is...
I moved in 1987.
Oh, I'm sorry,
in
I got
1995.
that wrong.
Yeah, 1995, I got my video camera.
Ah, okay. I was going to ask you if you were there for 1997, March 13th.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But when you moved there, did you right away get into what was going on in that area?
When we moved here in 1987, it was a weird transition, because what happened was I was into UFOs until about a year before that. I was into UFOs until I was about 16 years old, and I was, about all the experiences and all that, and all the books and stuff like that. I read them, and I was really into the subject. And for some reason, when I turned 16, I was basically, been in high school maybe a year or so, and so I was kind of like in the threshold of going through high school and stuff like that. And then when I turned 17, my parents decided that we're going to leave Seattle and move to Phoenix. And so I started a new high school when we moved out here in 87 and finished high school in 88. And then so this is probably about the third year that I was kind of not pursuing or being interested in the UFO stuff. And then in about I think it was about 1990 was when I got back into it, because I had an experience here in Phoenix, and another bedroom one, and it related me back to the Seattle experiences and all that, and I thought to myself, they followed me here. Like how did they know? And all this stuff was flooding my brain, it was all coming back. And so then in 1990, I was going through a book, a bookstore, and I saw the communion book on the shelf. Mm-hmm. And I never read it before, and I'd never even seen it before. I didn't know anything about it. And it had already been out like about maybe, 4 years or something like that by, in 1990 when I, bought it. I guess apparently it had already been out for like 5 or 6 years. I don't know. But I bought it and went home, and when I saw the cover, of course, I saw that. I was like, yeah, I need to get this. This is connected to me somehow. And I read it, and it relayed me back to when I was a kid. Some of the experiences he had, it brought me back into it, kind of. Basically, it did. It really did bring me back into it. So then that's when I followed up and buying the Bud Hopkins book, Missing Time, and then I bought Intruders, Bud Hopkins Intruders, and then I started buying a bunch of UFO abduction literature, like Secret Life from David Jacobs, and a couple more Whitley Strieber books, Transformation and stuff, just trying to get the feel, because now I was starting to connect and I was connecting myself with some of these other people that had the experience from a young age. And I bought the Ed Walters book, Gulf Breeze, Florida Sightings. Now, this is what kind of turned me into the Skywatcher here, is I saw a Sightings television show broadcast. Sightings, remember that old show Sightings?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Of course. Now, they had a Sightings episode, and this was about in 1993, I believe, 1993, 1994. And it was about a guy that can videotape a UFO any time of the day. It doesn't matter. He can go outside in his backyard, set up the video camera, boom, he gets a UFO on video. Doesn't matter what time of day. As long as there's daylight outside, he's able to get it on video. And so I was like, this is what I've been waiting my whole life to do, to get it on video. I saw the UFOs before, and now it's, I've read all these books. I have a huge UFO library, and now it's time to get the evidence. I want to know how to do this. And so basically, this guy was John Bro Wilkie. Okay, and you probably have heard of him. He's in UFO literature. Mm-hmm. John Bro Wilkie, he was able to videotape this UFO any time of the day. So Sightings.
Oh yes, I know who he is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he set up his video camera. Sightings set up their television broadcast video, cameras, film cameras, and they were able to get UFOs on tape right alongside this guy on his cameras as well. And so this was proven right there, that this guy can do it. And so he had a technique, and the technique was described. And what he did is he took the side of his house and he blocked the sun out so you can't see the sun. And then the glowing remainder of the sun, he took his camera and he zoomed into this part of the sky where you can see, like, way up there. and you can see like bugs shooting by. You can see like cotton balls cruising across the sky. But then, way, way up there, past all the cotton balls, past all the bugs, you would see an object come into frame, stop, slowly start to move, and then shoot away real fast. And he would get like a bunch of these, and in different, they would come in different speeds, different altitudes, and they would do different things. Some of them were cigar shaped, some of them were round, some of them were hockey puck looking, some of them were cylinders. Any category of the UFO. If you look at UFOs, they're described in a million different shapes. He got every million shape you can think of. And so that was it. I went out and bought my video camera, and I set it up, and I tried to do the same thing. And I did a little bit of research as well, which I saw on some of the other sighting shows about the 1990 solar eclipse in Mexico City, where at the top and the height of the eclipse, when the entire disk of the sun was blocked, that people started videotaping UFOs all over the place. And I thought, it's the same concept. You block the sun out, you can see these things way, way up there. It happens in the eclipse. It happens when you block it away with your house. Same concept. So I did it. I got video of a UFO, and I contacted MUFON. This was back in 1997 when I was able to get a bunch of UFOs on video. And then in 1997, I got this one double dome looking UFO, like what I describe as a cigar shape with two domes on top instead of one. And so I thought this video is really interesting. And it was a daylight video as well, and it streaks across the camera really, really fast. So I called Channel 10 Fox News, and they looked at the video, and they're like, oh, yeah, we got to run this. So they showed the video, but before they showed the video, I thought, well, if they're going to do it on Fox 10 tonight, and I've already had MUFON over there a week before that, and they took the video and took a sighting report for me and took a copy of the video. So I figure, well, I had this list of ufologists in this book that came out that was published back then, and I were familiar with Linda Moulton Howe's reports on Dreamland with Art Bell on Sunday. So I had her number in that book, and I figured, well, I'm just going to call her and tell her, that tonight, if you want the broadcast, I'll send it to you. But tonight on Fox, they're going to have a local news story about some footage I shot. And so I thought I'd just call her and tell her, and if she wants the tape, I'll send it to her. Instead, she did a whole audio interview with me about the footage and about what was going to show later on Fox. And she took the interview, and later that night, she went on Art Bell at 8 o'clock and broadcast the interview with me and her on Dreamland an hour before or 2 hours before the actual newscast. So she kind of scooped Fox 10 in Phoenix by putting it on Dreamland and so I was like, wow, this is cool. I'm on Art Bell, but I'm on via interview with Linda Moulton Howe, so I'm not actually live on the Art Bell show. I'm not even live. I'm on an interview, a pre-recorded interview with Linda on Dreamland. So I thought that was kind of cool to get on Art Bell via an interview with Linda, on an audio tape. That was kind of a cool way to break through into the thing with radio. So, I was starting to do radio shows after that, but that was the first time I ever was introduced to being on a UFO radio show. So later on that night, they put the video on Fox 10 and they showed it. And people earlier in the night, they heard it on Art Bell, and they heard me on with Linda. And so the next day, I got mail from all over the world. Like within the next week, not the next day, but within a couple days, I was getting letters from everywhere, like New Zealand and all sorts of places. And then everybody in Phoenix that saw it on the Double Dome video, they were calling me and trying to contact me. So I went and spoke for the Art Bell Chat Club that year, and it just snowballed after that. And that's how I really started getting into the video of this, and just capturing more video and more video and more video. Mm-hmm. And then what was kind of unique was that I decided not to do the sun technique thing anymore, because people that were doing it at the time, with not just me, but during pre-1998, like I would say between 1993 and 1998, there was the only people that were videotaping UFOs, and the only people that were doing the sun technique as well were, we can count them on just, maybe, one hand even. It was like me. It was Tim Edwards, Jose Escamillas, Tom King, and John Breaux. And that was it, 5. There's maybe a couple more. There was a couple other skywatchers that I knew at the time that were just starting to get into it. Oh, yeah, and you had Tom Saborin from Gulf Breeze, Florida, and a couple of the Gulf Breeze people, because that flap went on for like 5 or 6 years. And there was a lot of skywatchers that came out of it, like Bruce Morrison and Ed Walters and a few other famous ones. But there wasn't very many of us back in, like 93 to 98 that were taping UFOs. You can count them on, 2 hands, basically. And so there were the daylight sighting people like me and Jose Escamillas and Tim Edwards and Tom King and John Breaux, the people that did a lot of the solar technique. We were getting attacked by all these debunkers that were saying, oh, those are just cotton balls or insects. And John Breaux and us, we would always say, you can tell the difference between the cotton and the insects. The UFOs, you can tell the difference. But, they don't want to ever listen to it. They attacked his rods, footage stuff. He, saying all the rods are just insects and all that stuff like that. So I got kind of fed up with it. So around 1998, I decided to change my tactics on videotaping UFOs. I decided that I'm not going to do any solar footage anymore. I'm not going to film UFOs using the solar technique, or I'm not going to film any more rods or any of that stuff anymore if I'm using that technique. And so I changed my technique, which was to turn my back on the sun, to film everything away from the sun, totally back against the sun. And I was still able to get the rod cylinder UFOs, the hockey puck UFOs, the disc-shaped UFOs. I was still able to get all the same stuff, but the footage got better. Turning your back on the sun and videotaping them this way, my footage started to improve, and I was starting to get better footage, like more structured videos, like where you can see structure and stuff like that, where before it was just like a fuzzy ball or whatever. Now you can see like the actual roundness or the structure or the oval shape of the video. And so there was an improvement in video, basically.
Can you explain, before we move on, exactly how you were doing the solar blockout?
Okay, what you do is you when you're out in your patio in the backyard, you have like that overhang above you. Mm-hmm. You can do it like that. You can take your position of your camera and block the entire sun out until you just get the corona of the sun, the shine, like basically the bright part of it, not the center part. You want to completely block the sun out till you just get that glow, that glow overhang, of it. And you want to either do that behind your house, like depending on what position the sun is during the day. Like at high noon, the ideal position would be like the overhang of a patio, to where you get that bright part of the sun. And if it's later in the day, like 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, you'd want to use the side of your house where you can see like the the left part of the sun coming out, not the disk part, of course, but just the glow of it. And during like the early hours of the day, a good thing would be like a fence to block out that part, the disk part, and get the shiny part, so you can film at the top of the corona part. Now, also another thing is you always want to use UV protective sunglasses when you do it. You never want to point the lens of your camera directly at the sun. Like you never want to have the disk of the sun exposing into the camera lens. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to completely block the sun before you even set your camera up. And so when you do get the bright part of the sun coming out of the area that's blocked off, like the shiny part, you'll want to zoom in with your camera into that corona part. And not even completely in the corona, a little bit to the left or the right of it, depending on where you're at, just away, till you're just on the outer edges of the shiny part. Zoom into that, and you'll start seeing what you'll see. First off, is you're going to see like bugs, cotton, stuff way up there, and stuff that you can be confused at thinking that that's a UFO. But watch and look, because it may very well be a UFO, but look at the difference. Make sure that you see bugs, and make sure that you see spider webs. Make sure that you see cotton. Make sure that you can identify all the known stuff, and then that way when you see the stuff that's higher up there, then you'll see the real thing, and you'll get it on video, and you'll be able to roll it back on your computer or your TV and say, look, all this stuff is this identifiable stuff, but look at this. No one can tell me that this is this other stuff, because it's obviously not. And then you'll be able to, videotape a UFO. And like I said, eventually I got away from that way to do it, but that's always a great way to start. And that's what I was getting at before. If you want to start out videotaping them, that's a great way to start. And then once you can identify everything like that, once you turn your back on the sun and look up at the sky, you'll know exactly what you're looking for. You'll know exactly what to look for, and when you see it, you'll know what you're looking at. And also another thing is you use the sky as like a canvas, like a painter would use, and that's how we recognize a UFO. Is if, like in Arizona, we always have a perfectly blue sky with no clouds ever. And when you do see clouds, they're really high, or they're blanketing the entire sky because it's going to rain. So most of the time we have nothing. It's just a big blue sky, and you focus your eyes in on this big blue canvas, and then just let your eyes just look at it. And then after about 5 minutes, your eyes are adjusted into it, so that anything that disturbs the canvas, like an airplane or a balloon or a UFO or anything up there, it's going to disturb that, and you're going to see it right away. It's going to, your eyes will catch it, because it's messing up your perfect blue canvas, So your eyes will be able to adjust and say, hey, there's something, and grab your camera. Now, this is how I do it. I always have binoculars, like a pair of... I was
going to ask you that.
Yeah, and the reason for this is because, number one, I got like 10 by 50 binoculars. They don't cost that much, and they're pretty powerful. They're not the most powerful or anything, but you don't need that. You just need what's affordable, and I would say 10 by 50s. Don't go any lower than that. But it's a good binocular, good power. And what I do is, if I see something that I want to see what it is, I'll look through the binoculars first. And if I can see, oh, that's a plane, that's a helicopter, I'll forget it, But if I look through the binoculars and I see, okay, that's something that I can't explain, then that's when I turn the camera on. That way, you're not sitting there with your camera on, wasting your battery. So then when the UFO shows up and you press record, oh, the battery is dead. So what you want to do is use your binoculars until you see a UFO. And then once you do, turn your camera on and zoom into it and start recording it. And I also have lenses that I use that are different power, like a 550. I have what they call a 5X lens made by KUT. It's called a Cut 5X, and it puts like 50 power on your video camera.
So is there a lot of time in the field that's just plain boring, just like looking around? And I mean, you have to have a lot of patience for what you're doing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, the thing is about daylight video of UFOs is like, it's going to happen. If you sit there for like 2 or 3 hours, you're bound to see something. I mean, there's been times where we've watched for like 3 or 4 hours and don't see anything, not even a balloon or anything like that. And so we just... chalk it up, nothing that day. So try it again. And so what you want to generally try to do is put in hours. And that's how I've always looked at it, is you try to put in maybe like 20 hours a week, and then you're bound to catch something. Now in the summertime, like how it is in Phoenix, like for the last couple days, we've hit like 116. Like Saturday was like 116. We've had like 115, 113. It's been in the 120 12 through 116s the last week, and so forget UFOs during the day. I mean, that's not going to happen. And so I turned to nighttime sky watching during this time of year. And if you look at all my footage, I mean, if you go to my website, it's ufosoverphoenix.com, you can download the video there on a video page, or there's a button on there where you can just simply go to my YouTube channel and then check all my YouTube videos and then look at my catalog of footage, and you'll see that I have some pretty great nighttime footage too. And so, nighttime footage, it's few and far between, though, I tell you. I've been able to videotape some really good smoking gun nighttime videos, but I probably only have maybe like 5 of them because, you just don't. I mean, people say, oh, wow, you were able to even see UFO more than once. That's like freaks people out. Or now you're even able to videotape a UFO more than once. That freaks people out, and it's because they're not educated about it. Like UFOs, like I said, UFOs before, it's a high altitude phenomenon that occurs every day over every single major city of the United States. All you have to do is look for them. It's the same at night too, as well. So. It's one of those things you go onto like the UFO reporting center, like for instance, Peter Davenport UFO reporting center, and you can go by state index and see every single sighting, and you'll realize that the data is just incredible. Like they go, there's hundreds of sightings every month, in every state. So. It goes back years and years and years every year. You can go back 20 years or whatever. So it's nothing that people should be like. If you're a UFO hunter or you're someone that's interested in this stuff, you're going to see a bunch of them. If it's what you do. But if people don't know much about it, they don't have the research or knowledge about it, it kind of freaks them out that someone's able to see like a UFO over and over again because they think it's a once in a lifetime experience, or even to videotape one or just to see one, and it's not like that.
Do you think, though, you have your experience in Phoenix, so what makes you think that they're over other cities as well, like they are there?
Well, that's kind of going back to the John Bro thing. When I got into the videotaping stuff in 2005, I started quickly becoming friends with all the skywatchers that were shooting video. When they found out I shot the same type of UFO footage that they shot, they all wanted to be my friend and know who I was. So in 1995, I met people like Tim Edwards that had shot cylinder footage in Salida, Colorado, for instance, and he shot daylight cylinder footage, and you're probably familiar with that video. And I also met during that same year Jose Escamillas, which lived in New Mexico at the time. And so now already I have a friend in Colorado that's shooting cylinders, and I shot some daylight cylinders too. So he's shooting the same stuff I am shooting, but he lives in Colorado. And then during the same time frame, I met Jose Escamillas that lived in New Mexico, and he was shooting what they called the Midway. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but back in 1995, Jose Escamillas was famous for the Midway, New Mexico UFO sightings, and he was using the solar technique to videotape little hockey puck shaped daylight UFOs in Midway, New Mexico. And then a little bit later, maybe a year later, he started to become famous doing the rod things. So this was even before he was famous with rods. He was shooting a famous UFO flap that he made famous himself by shooting footage in Midway, New Mexico, the Midway UFO flap. And he was getting famous off that before even he got famous with the rod footage.
Now, is this a guy that used to film out of his skylight sometimes?
I'm not really too sure on that, but this, you know who Jose Escamillas is, obviously the rods.
Right. Okay,
yeah. Before he got famous with rods, he was famous for the daylight footage that he was shooting in Midway, New Mexico, and it was called the Midway sightings. And this was I'd say 92 through 94, somewhere in there. And so maybe 95. So it was in there. It was before he got into the rod thing, but so he lived in New Mexico, and then of course John Bro at the time he lived in Southern California, and so they were all four of them were all shooting the same stuff at the time that I was shooting here in Phoenix. So that's what I concluded this is happening every day in every city across the country. I mean these four other guys prove it pretty much to me. Now, if we had one of these guys in every state, they would all be reporting the same or videotaping the same stuff.
Now, have you had some footage that you really examined closely and you could figure out it was something, prosaic, like, say, a helicopter at a distance or something like that?
Oh, yeah, all the time. I have I probably have a stack of 200 VHS tapes because back through the 90s, when you're shooting on 8mm, we would transfer all of our footage straight to a VHS tape. That way, if our 8mm tape got eaten or damaged or something, we would have a copy of it on a VHS tape. Mm-hmm. So back then, instead of just copying the one siding onto the tape, we just dumped the entire 8mm onto the VHS because you can put extended play and it would take 5 or 6 hours of tape. So we would throw it all on VHS tapes and then go over it and decide. Most of the time you can tell in camera when your that's why I always got into the binoculars before I even press record. Because when you start early on, you start to realize that you're starting to videotape a lot of crap, so to speak. And I use that word because it ends up being a helicopter or a ball of cotton or a balloon or something like that until you zoom in and get, you're pressing record and you're trying to capture this thing. And then when you get in on it on Zoom, that's just a ball of cotton or a balloon or a helicopter or a high altitude satellite or something like that. And so we had a lot of that stuff that we examined just to make sure, but also to get away from it altogether. That's when I started, I got the binoculars. That way we don't have to waste videotape, waste recorded tape, and have to record over something. And everything costs money. Even back then, a high 8 tape still cost $5 or whatever. And if you have to record over it, that doesn't look good because the quality, I don't know if it's going to hold the same quality, if this tape's been recorded over 3 times, because the first 2 times we recorded balloons by accident,
Right.
So
now, you mentioned earlier that these are high altitude, a lot of them are high altitude, and one of the things you hear is that a lot of people are saying about the triangle crafts that no one sees them at high altitude, and I just wondered, had you ever seen anything triangular high altitude?
Yeah. A matter of fact, I have, and you're right. There is a lot of low altitude activity with UFOs and triangles, but generally these things like to stay a little bit away from us, they're a little higher up. And I got some daylight triangle footage in the 90s from different people, and I videotaped one too. But generally, they're different. Depending on, like I said, that's weird about UFOs is someone shoots a triangle and then another person shoots a triangle, and then you look at both videos and they're different. The objects are different. The crafts are different. Very rarely do you have this person videotape the exact same thing in this video, where you can compare both videos and say, well, that looks like the exact same thing. Most of the time you're going to get 2 objects that are very similar, but you wouldn't say that they were the exact same thing. But every now and then that happens, but not too often. And that's the funny thing about the daylight triangles, as I was thinking, is because I remember there was some footage I looked at by a guy, Tom King, back in the early 90s that shot triangular footage. But it looked like, it was high altitude, but the way that it looked like each tip of the triangle was like a round ball, but they were connected together. like by something like an outer rim. So the triangle shape was there, but on each end of the triangle was like a round ball. You had these 3 round balls in a triangular formation, but when you zoom in on the footage, you can see the outline, beyond the ball of the actual shape of the triangle. And then I compared it to a video that was shot the same year by this guy, Prophet Yahweh. I don't know if you've heard of this guy before. Prophet Yahweh, he's been around for 20 years shooting UFO video. He come out of Vegas. I did an investigation on him back in 1996. Drove out to Vegas to see if this guy was for real or not. That's a totally different story, but he shot this triangular footage, but it didn't look anything like the Tom King footage. This triangular footage was boomerang shaped, and it would look like a bunch of like white balls, like you would see 2 white sticks put together like a V, but when he zoomed in, it looked like little tiny like white balls, like they could be balloons tucked together in a triangle like shape, but it wasn't that, because they weren't like flipping like balloons or tumbling. They were like rigid, stuck, and it was traveling at like nose first across the sky. And that was, some pretty intriguing video. Like, a lot of these guys, to tell you the truth, a lot of these sky watchers out there, and I'm one of them, so I can tell you this. I'm not, it's amazing to me because they will put out some junk footage sometimes, stuff that they know is not UFOs. And then they'll put out some stuff that they've shot that is UFOs. And it's not like they're trying to be hoaxers, or it's not like they're trying to, put one over on anybody. I think that they honestly sometimes don't know whether this is a balloon or a UFO or an orb, and they're 50-50 on it, so they're just like, let's just put it out there. Who cares? Mm-hmm. And that might not be the right approach sometimes. And the people that do it more often than they put out a real piece of footage, eventually they're labeled into a group of people. Yeah. That and all about that, but there's groups on Facebook now that are like these sky anomaly groups where they're posting like balloons, and they think that, no, this is the weirdest thing, and they think that the UFO is like a mimic. It's like becoming a balloon, like it's doing a shape of a balloon to try to trick you. And what they're filming is not a balloon at all. Even though it's got a big string, and even though it's got a picture of Spider-Man on the balloon, they think they call it a balloon mimic.
Yeah, it's
and they call it sky. Yeah, it's sky anomaly variables and all this other nice words that they try to come up with to try to convince you that it's not just a regular balloon. I don't believe in any of that stuff. I got VHS tapes full of balloons that I've zoomed in on to see if it was a UFO, and I never would put it out there as a UFO. Yeah. Yeah. So So you got large groups of these people out there that are doing this, is totally discrediting the entire video movement of ufology. Unless you videotape a perfect saucer-shaped object, or what everybody knows of as a flying saucer UFO shape and look. If it doesn't have that perfect UFO shape and look, and it's got like an orb look or a balloon look, then it's going to be labeled as a balloon or a piece of sky garbage because of all these people that are posting all this junk. So yeah.
No, I got it. And there is a lot of things out there to muddy the water, as well as CGI and hoaxes, real hoaxes. We're on live with Jeff Willis. If anyone wants to call in, that's 603-967-4030. Speaking of hoaxes, there was one that went viral recently. I think it was called Team 10 or something like that.
Yeah, Secure Team.
Team 10, yeah.
Yeah, these guys can... it's funny because being into UFOs for so long, when I was a little kid, when I was like I said, when I was like 7 years old, or I got that book off the shelf, and some of the pictures in that book, when I was like in kindergarten and in the second grade, a couple of those different books that I had checked out from the library, they had those perfect, beautiful pictures of flying saucers by Billy Meyer.
Oh yeah.
Now, when you're looking at that as a 6 or 7 year old kid, you're going to believe that. Those pictures. Of course, they were in the book and they were claimed to be real. And of course, that whole case and those pictures, when they came out at the time, that whole case was being brought forward in print by the investigators that brought us the case, which were Lee Elders and Wendell Stevens. And of course, the person that was backing up the video to be real was none other than Jim Delatoso. Now, all these guys are great UFO researchers and they're great video analysis and stuff, but we're talking 1975, 1976, 1977. Maybe they had the wool pulled over their eyes, because now every time, I'd say almost 80% of the time that one of those type of style, that great of a picture or a video comes out, it's only a few days later where everybody's like crying hoax on it. Like the Secure Team 10, where they keep on putting out these perfect UFO images that everybody wants to believe, but no one can prove if it's real or fake, because they're never going to give you the original tape, of course. So right there, you're never going to know if it's real. And they always claim, "Oh, we got this footage from this person, and now we got that person on the line," or "Here's that person, a conversation." So you don't know if this is the guy's brother or the guy across the street, or you don't know if they're given a script to read or any of this stuff. And then they never come on to do an interview with a regular show or on television. They never come out to defend the video or whatever. So, it's like Secure Team and those other guys, Third Phase of the Moon.
Yeah.
And there's and so it's really bad, because what if someone videotapes a real UFO on their video camera and they go online because they don't know who to report it, and they go on YouTube and they see this Secure Team 10 or this Third Phase of the Moon guys, and they believe it, and they call them or email them. They say, "Oh, I got something that's real. You got to see this," and they give it to these guys, and now these guys are putting it out there as part of their fold of junk. And this one just happens to be real. And of course, they're not going to pass that up. They're going to throw it in with the mix of all the other stuff that they're either producing or faking or getting from the public that's either real or fake. And so that's another thing. Somebody could be faking them out too, and they don't know. They just put anything out there that looks good. If it doesn't look good, they're not going to put it out there. But if it looks good, they're going to use it or put it out there. So that's the thing with those type of YouTube channels too. They don't put out the maybes, They put out what is considered the real thing, And even if it's CGI or whatever, we don't know until we have the real tape.
Yeah,
Another
thing is that, the lack of witnesses or real witnesses. Something like that one recently that went so viral. It was so obvious in the sky for so long that I'm sure there would be multiple witnesses, and you heard of nothing.
Right.
And that was supposed to be in Ohio, I believe, or something like that.
Right, and that was the one with the cloud. Was that? With the cloud.
That's
it was
right.
kind of in the cloud. Okay. Yeah, now there's a thing about that. Now, you see, most people never look up. Okay? So when you have a sighting where there's only like one or two people, that's not too uncommon because of that fact that people just don't look up in the sky. They're walking down the street, or they're usually looking down, and so they don't look up. And then if you are lucky enough to actually videotape something, the way that thing was like in the cloud or whatever, these things are never trying to like broadcast they're here.
Yeah.
And the way that thing was, it was like just kind of like hanging in the cloud, like hoping that no one can see it, type of a thing. So it didn't really, if it is real, it looks like it was trying to camouflage itself. So.
Wow. There's someone in the, there's two different chat rooms here. One is on Skype and the other one is on our website. But someone wrote that because they were in pursuit of the truth, asking the right questions to Secure Team 10, they banned them right away from the YouTube channel. Something else.
Well, you know, they're going to do that because there's a lot of UFO websites out there that flat out call them hoaxers and have their videos on their site and say this is why these guys are fakers. A matter of fact, there's a website out there called UFOtheater.com that's dedicated to exposing hoaxes. And this blew me away because back in 2006, I was contacted by a guy that ran a website called UFOtheater.com. It's the same website, but it's a totally different owner because back then, the guy that owned the site pulled a hoax. He pulled a hoax on me. And what he did was he was like, yeah, I'm going to come out to Phoenix and I want to do a skywatch with you because you're known for this stuff and famous for this stuff or whatever. And so I was like, sure, and so I was became friends with his website, and I had a banner to his website. He had a banner to mine, and then the guy comes out here. He lived in Texas, by the way, so he was saying, yeah, I'm planning a trip to Arizona to go skywatching with you. And so we became friends and so on. And then when he came out to Phoenix, we did a short little skywatch. I dropped him off at his hotel room with his girlfriend. And then the next day, he called me and he goes, oh, you'll never believe what happened when you dropped me off at my hotel. I got the most incredible UFO footage in the world. And so I said, oh, really? Well, bring it over to my house. I got to see this. And so the guy's name was Brian Besant. And he came to my house in the morning, brought the video. I put it into my computer and watched it. And it was the most amazing footage. There was this light that showed up over the mountain, and then all of a sudden, or first it comes down from the sky and stops, and then glows, and then another light comes down from the top, and then it kind of docks with that light, and then another light comes down and docks with it, until like 6 lights form this flower-looking thing, and then it like totally goes out. And I'm thinking in my head, like, the first thing I thought in my mind was, this is the most incredible footage I've ever seen, and this looks real. This looks like a real video. And so right away he had me going. Plus, I'd been friends with him for a few months after knowing the guy and trusting him because his site had UFO videos all over it, and I trusted the guy, and so. My second thoughts were, wait a minute, how does this guy come into town and in 2 days get the most incredible UFO footage in the state of Arizona? I was like, this can't be, there's something wrong with this. I mean, I want to believe it, I want to trust the guy, but at the same time, my brain's saying there's something wrong with this picture here. And so I knew what to do. Okay, we have Jim Delatoso. Yep. In Phoenix, Arizona.
Right.
And the Arizona news channels, they have him in their back pocket. They can use him whenever they want. So I told him, you know what you need to do, Brian? You need to take this tape. You need to go directly to Channel 3, and you need to put this on TV. And so I totally set him up. I had him go down there with the tape. I knew they were going to pull Jim out of the woodwork, and they did. The first, they did the broadcast on his amazing footage with the guy and did an interview with him, and then they sent him packing, and then they called in Jim to do a second follow up on the story to analyze the footage, and Jim blew it apart and found out it was designed by a computer program, and they called the guy in for the second interview to come together with Jim so Jim can confront him on the video being fake and all this stuff, and the guy never showed up. So they totally took it apart as a hoax, and Jim showed why it was a hoax on his computer and how it was generated, how the lights were generated and stuff, like by a computer program and all this. And so by this time it was blowing up on Coast to Coast AM and on Jeff Wren's show, and the footage was already blown up because of the first broadcast on the news, as well as being on his website. And then, later, the second part comes out to it being a hoax, and then it really blew up. It went crazy. And so then he's mad at me because he knows I set him up to get, for us to find out what's going on here. And we found out it was a hoax. So like about a week later, he finally admits it. He does an expose on his site where he admits the whole thing is a hoax and why he did it. And then after that, the website goes offline. It totally disappears. And then a couple months later, as checking the domain name, all of a sudden the domain is parked, and now it's owned by somebody else. And then now we look at like 10 years later, all of a sudden 10 years later, the website comes back online it comes back online, UFOtheater.com. And now this website's dedicated to exposing hoaxes. And they have a list of people that are hoaxing. The Secure Team 10, Third Phase of the Moon. And this guy that is running the site now, I like when it first popped up, I was really blown away. I was like, are you kidding me? Is this guy back? And now he's going to dedicate his ufology to exposing hoaxes after he was the hoaxer. And it turned out that wasn't the case. Turned out that this guy bought that domain knowing he knew about the shady past of the domain, and he was going to try to make it good by making this domain dedicated to just exposing hoaxes. And so, I had a little chat with him, and I was completely blown away. And that's when I learned that, for Third Phase of the Moon and Secure Team 10, there's a couple other ones on there that they claim are hoaxing all these videos. And that's the sad part, is like, what if some of these videos aren't hoax because people see them on YouTube and send their real video to them? Yeah.
That's so true. Now, what was his statement of why he hoaxed that video before his website went down?
Well, his whole thing on his expose that he posted about why he did it was because he wanted to prove that Jeff Wren's website will post anything on UFOs without even knowing if it's real or not. So his whole thing was to attempt to try to discredit the Wren's website and the Jeff Wren's show. That was his immediate goal. His other goal was also to prove that when you buy UFO DVDs online, that it could be all fake and that you just wasted your money. And that was kind of a shot at me, because a lot of us that were doing UFOs at the time, we were trying to come out with videotapes, DVDs to sell with our real footage on it. So basically it was his way of trying to shoot everybody's real footage down by saying, oh, you don't know what you're buying now. Now you can't trust my footage. How can you trust anybody else's? So now when you spend $20 on a DVD, you may be getting completely fake footage. And so it seems like ever since that case that our sales did go down too. And I don't want to give him credit for dropping DVD sales on UFOs across the internet on everybody's website, but it's almost like it's that happened almost, because his site got like worldwide national attention on Wren's and on Coast to Coast AM at the time, and then all of a sudden it was proved to be a hoax, and so people were weary about buying DVDs after that point. It seemed like.
Yeah. There's a question up on the message board. Do you connect early childhood experiences and your ability to have these sightings?
Well, at first I did, and now I in a way, I do and I don't, because I think that if you've never had a UFO sighting, or if you've never had a UFO like abduction or alien experience or whatever, if you've never had either one of those, I believe that you can still go out in your backyard during the middle of the day and see these things up there if you put the time in to look for them. Okay, and further in that question, do you have any other paranormal or high strangeness experiences?
One time, I'll just, the one that pops to the mind the most was, I would say this was back in like 2012, I think. 2013. It was about maybe like 5 p.m, and preseason football had just started, so I was watching like the very first preseason football game of the year. And I remember it was like Dallas against someone. I can't really remember who, but I remember Dallas. And so I was lying there watching it,
And for some reason, I don't. It's weird because like when you're watching a game or watching something on TV that you're interested in, and then all of a sudden go into like a half sleep state, doesn't really make sense to me. Like, why would I let myself drift off like that? And so that was kind of weird. So like all of a sudden I'm in this half sleep, half awake state, and the next thing I know, I'm completely paralyzed. I'm into that paralysis again, and I can't move at all. And I am able to force my eyelids open. That's the only muscle on my body is that I can move is my eyelids. So I'm able to open them. And everything's fuzzy now because I'm in this state and I can't break out of it. But I'm thinking in my head, well, I'm paralyzed and I can't break out of this, but I just managed to open my eyelids and I can see. So I see the TV's still on and the fuzzy picture's on, and you can't really make out the game because I'm in this state. And all of a sudden I see this, the only way I can describe it is like a U-shaped, like a woman's purse that is like U-shaped. You know what I'm saying? Like a U-shaped purse, handbag. It looked like it was leather, like a leather texture, and it had like octopus tentacles all over it. It was, and they were flipping everywhere. It had I'd say 20 octopus-like tentacles, maybe 12 inches long, each one of them flipping all over the place like crazy. And it was all attached to this U-shaped thing. And this thing was hovering about, I'd say, this thing was literally hovering 4 feet from me to the left of the side of the bed. And it was hovering right over a case of all of my DVDs, all of my UFO footage that's been dumped onto DVD storage. And I have this crate full of DVDs in spools, stacks of them in there. And this thing was hovering right over that area, and I saw it hovering over it for probably, it seemed like maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and then it disappeared. And as soon as it disappeared, I was able to break free of the paralysis and blink my eyes a little bit and rub them and look again and see, did I just see what I thought I saw and feel how I just thought I felt, right like that, paralyzed. And then it was like when these things come into your presence or whatever they are, they have the ability to turn you off or shut you off. Mm-hmm. And that is described in all the UFO literature, in all the abduction stuff as well. So it's not just a sleep, what the medical community would call just a sleep paralysis where you've hallucinated this. This is not the case. Sleep paralysis, that's a completely different thing. That's when you're in the awake and asleep state and you can't move or whatever, but you're not going to see these things through. You're not going to be able to open up your eyelids and see forms and figures and these things doing these weird things. That's, your brain doesn't work like that. I'm sorry, but it's not going to make up fake stuff just because you're in a sleep. You're half in asleep and half awake, and it's, what does scientists and experts know about what sleep paralysis is, anyways?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. One of the things that came to mind is when you're talking about the different objects that you see, how about orange orbs? You hear about that a lot.
Oh, yeah. A matter of fact, we had a case, a flap. We had what they call a UFO flap here between the year 2000 and the year 2003, where we had this red or orange orb that was showing up in the same time, same area, and it was videotaped by 10 or 12 different people over a 3-month period, and sometimes when it would show up, there would be 2 of them, side by side, not close enough to where you would think that it was one object with 2 lights on the side, but far enough away, maybe a half a mile in between the middle of each of these 2 things, and they would travel together at a slow speed. Now, a lot of them the people thought, oh, these are just Chinese lanterns, or it's a road flare tied to a mylar or something like that. But it wasn't that, because when we zoom in on high power, there was no smoke, there was no flickering, like candle or flare type of flickering. It was like a solid glow, like an orb, like you're saying, like an orange, or like a glow, And so this went on for on and off. Like there was a good time period there for about the first summer it happened. This thing would show up maybe twice a week. It was pretty punctual on its. I mean, it was pretty consistent. But then after that summer, it dropped off, and then the next 2 years, it would show up sporadically, like maybe once every 3 weeks or something like that. So, yeah.
Now, when you're doing this Skywatch, do you always do it alone, or sometimes do you have someone with you?
Well, I normally do it alone unless we do a group outing, or if I have some people that want to come by and take, do a Skywatch with me.
What about night vision? Do you ever get into that? I know you said you filmed at night, and it was kind of boring, but do you ever get into night vision as well?
Well, yeah, I've gotten into night vision, but I don't have the equipment. Mm-hmm. Basically, I have a Sony camera that has night shot on it, which is totally different. But it does illuminate. It's pretty good for video, camera quality.
Right. Of all the footage that you've taken, or I should say, everything that you've seen, is there something that stands out as the most remarkable?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of them. There's a couple of night pieces of footage. There's this one piece of footage on my site that's labeled 4/20/2006, and that's when it was shot. And so what happens with this piece of footage was really weird. It starts out as like two orbs at night, and they're just two like white orbs, like in the distance. They don't look very far. It looks like within about a mile away. And then you see these two orbs for about 30 seconds, and then all of a sudden one just kind of dims out to where there's only like one. And then that one gets kind of closer and closer and closer. And then all of a sudden you'll see like it shooting orbs out of it, like one at a time. And they're going, and it's not shooting them down, it's shooting them up out of the top of it. And so these 4 or 5 lights that come out of it, it turns into like a triangular shape. And then the top of where the triangular is turns red, like flashes, it doesn't like flash red. It kind of just gets like really bright red and then kind of dims down. And then after seeing this for about a minute more, the whole thing just completely shuts off. And so, yeah, that's a doozy, that one. And then there was another one, a piece of footage that I've shot that's on a ton of different television programs that I'm on, and they always love to use it. And it's this one was. I think it was the May 12th, 2005, I believe it is, yeah. And what happens here is it's like a twilight shot, and you've probably seen it. It was like almost sunset, and you'll see like all of a sudden we're doing an interview. Okay, this is the funny thing. We met with the guy that had been seeing some UFOs in the area, and he actually shot his own video of some UFO footage that he's been having these sightings over and over for the last couple months. And so we meet him at the mountain where he's sees a lot of his footage, and we're doing an interview, and all of a sudden it shows up. And the funny thing about it is I already had the camera rolling because we were taping him talking on his interview. So like we had him on one camera. We're shooting him on 2 different cameras because we wanted to get the different camera angles. And so at the moment that he's on the one camera and I have the other camera, I don't have that one camera on him because the other camera was covering him. And I have it just over to the side just a little bit. And so he's not in the view. And all of a sudden, right in the middle of the screen of my camera that's already on record, that's where when the UFO shows up, right there, right? It just blinks on right in the middle of my camera frame, and And as I'm looking, I see it right away. And so, like, right off the bat, you hear me, I say, I got a series of lights. I got it. And so I zoom in on it, and it's 4 lights. And what's weird, what was bizarre is that the light on the far right disappears, and then a new light appears on the far left of the original 3 that were on the left-hand side of it. So this thing appears to be skipping across sky. And now the new light that's on the right that took its place disappears, and then a new light shows up on the left. And this happens like 3 or 4 times on each light, so it's like skipping across the sky in like a weird, like ricochet skipping pattern deal. And it was like really weird. And there was a like a small like thin cloud above these UFOs, and so we would be able to tell if it was a flare being dropped from an airplane because there was no planes above them dropping anything. And so all of a sudden these lights disappear, and then like 2 seconds later you'll see a light show up on the far left, maybe like a mile away from the original sequence within like 1 second. So it's almost like it hyper jumped, like after it disappeared, it hyper jumped over here and it shows up. So I got that all on one frame, and you're probably, or all on one catch, and I'm sure you're familiar with that piece of footage. That I don't know if you've seen it, but
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a matter of fact. Okay, so after I shoot the footage, I sent it to Art Bell immediately. That's very next day, or the same night even. I don't know. I think it was the next day or whatever. It may have been that same night, but I believe it was the next day. I emailed it to him, and Art called me right after he got it, and I wasn't home. Or I was home, but I was in the other room, so I didn't hear the phone ring. So the answer machine got it. And so I knew someone called, so I went out there and I pressed play, and I hear Art on the voicemail. He's saying, Jeff, this is Art Bell calling you. Are you there? And then he says, are you there? And then he says, hello, Jeff. Hangs up. And I was like, oh, gosh. And so
you know that voice.
Yeah, so I call him back, and he's like, you ready to go on the air with this? And I was like, yeah, of course.
Wow.
And so it was cool. So after that show featured that piece of footage, I got calls from Sci-Fi Channel. They wanted to put me on Factor Fake. So I was on the very first episode, Season 1, Episode 1 of Factor Faked.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where that... Yeah, and so that's one of the shows where you probably saw that piece of footage. And what they even did was, in that first season of Factor Faked, they actually incorporated my piece of footage into the beginning sequence of the opening of the show.
Right.
Like you'll see a bunch of different footage, and then you'll see mine there, and you'll hear my voice. And so that was kind of cool. And so what they did was they tried to fake the footage to see if they can duplicate it, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And so then they tried another experiment where they tried to fake it, and it didn't work. And so their third attempt was to have a nighttime investigation. And during that nighttime investigation, they had a UFO sighting in the same place where I had mine. So it kind of backed up my story. And then on top of that, they took my voice, which I didn't know they were going to do. They took an audio clip of my voice when I was describing what I saw and what my sighting, and they took my voice and they put it in a test which the Sheriff's Department uses, which is a voice test. It's a stress test analysis, and this will prove whether a person's voice is telling the truth or they're lying or whatever. And I passed on flying colors that my story was real. And so they showed that at the end of the clip of the Factor Fake 2. They said not only were we not able to duplicate what he shot, but we had our own sighting that night during our night investigation. And on top of that, our analysis on his story comes out conclusive that he told the truth.
I think I remember that whole episode. I've watched them all. And so they also used the footage, that same clip. They used it on the opening of that movie, Race to Witch Mountain with The Rock. And at the beginning of that movie, Race to Witch Mountain, they have a bunch of UFO clips at the very beginning of the movie. And they sandwiched that one in with about 5 or 6 other ones that I had shot. So they basically
licensed maybe 5 or 6 shots from me to go into the opening sequence, sandwiched in with about 50 other clips that other people shot, and that same clip was also used on another show that I was on called it was a sci-fi show, and it featured the son of Gilligan from Gilligan's Island. The son of him, his name's Patrick Denver, and this show was called X Testers. I don't know if you're. It only was like 4 episodes. They recorded. I think they did like 8 episodes, but they released the first 4 shows, and I guess it didn't get enough watches, so the rest of the episodes were shelved or whatever. And this ran on Discovery Channel, and so it was on that show, and then it was also on Ancient Aliens, showed a clip of it, and a few other shows. I think Best Evidence Caught on Tape, the Bob Kiviat special, it was on that show as well. And so, yeah, it's been on a ton of different shows.
Really made the rounds.
Yeah.
Shane has a couple of questions on the message board for you. Do you ever capture things that you would consider might be military technology?
Yeah, all the time. A lot of the ones... Well, see, that's the thing. Is a lot of times when you videotape what you think is like, those hockey puck-shaped UFOs or the round orb ones, the daylight ones, like a lot of the metallic high-altitude stuff that falls into that category, like hockey puck shaped or orb shaped, that's up there. A lot of that could fall into that category as some type of military probe or a military vehicle, secret project or something. Because, when it's that high up, you can't really tell how big it is. And all you really have is like an estimation of you think to yourself if I parked in a parking lot and I walked a couple, 500 feet away from my car and look at it, it's going to be tiny. It's going to be, you can take your 2 fingers and kind of put it in between them and kind of measure it that way. And you have to do the same thing with something way, way high up in the sky, like a 747 or a plane. It's going to look tiny up there, but when you're standing right next to it at the airport, it's huge. So you got to kind of figure out the, dimensions of these things. And it could be hard when they're so high. But that's how you rule out that it can't be a balloon or a cotton ball or something high up there, because if it's that high, you're not going to be able to see a tiny, something that small. It's going to be like a little pin dot up there compared to these other things that are bigger. So this thing has to be the size of a Suburban or 3 cars put together or something like that, So anything in that range that's bigger that you would conceive of when you're looking at it is this thing is bigger than a balloon, anything like that could be, is fair game for military, secret projects or extraterrestrial UFO. You really don't know. I mean, unless the thing lands and people get out and they, or aliens get out or whatever. That's the only way you're going to ever know.
Now, Shane also asked if you ever considered streaming your sky watching. I wonder if you could do that, but it seems like that there's so much downtime that
you can't. Well, we have done it, and we did do it. But and you're right. It's it is. There is a lot of downtime, but that during the point that we were doing it, it was during that flap that the UFO was coming 2 or 3 times a week. So we knew between 7:30 and 9 o'clock this thing's going to show up. 3 days out of the week, this thing was very consistent. So that's when we were doing our lives casts. And, as soon as the flap stopped, we stopped doing the sky watches because it's like you said, it's just, it'd be just like staring and looking at, for hours at nothing until finally something showed up. So in place of that, doing the live sky watches, now we'll do the live sky watches again if we run into another flap where the thing's coming back over and over and over. We'll try to get it live. But see, what we've done instead of that is if you go to UFOsobserverPhoenix.com, my website, you'll see Skywatch cameras that are live, that are there. And these are these are cameras that are set up around Phoenix that are broadcasting live, and I've just put the direct links on my website. So if you click it, the camera box will open up, and you'll get to see a live video of 4 or 5 different cams around Phoenix. And so they're connected with other websites, but we put them on our website, so you don't have to go to the other website to open them. You just click the camera; it opens right on our website, like it's our own cameras all over the valley, you know. And so, that's what we've done for live skywatching cameras. We've put some mountain cameras up there from Phoenix, different Phoenix live sources.
I see. Now, have you ever thought about using any other type of equipment along in concert with video? In other words, some type of detection or anything like that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've thought about it a lot, but we don't really, we don't even have the money really to get night vision, really. So we're running on a shoestring budget, and like on our website we have we have a donate button there for people that want to help us, to donate money to help us keep our footage on the line, our website's going, and all of our, hosting paid for. And like I was telling you before, we had our movie streams up there live that people can watch them, but we didn't get enough for that, enough watches to keep it on, to keep it hosted. But instead, we have our DVDs on there, where if you buy a DVD, they're like $20. If you buy one, you'll get the DVD, and it only costs probably like $3 to ship it, and then it cost me probably another $5 to make it. So whatever profit I have left over goes to hosting, or goes to new equipment, or to, I have a high 8 camera that still takes high 8 tapes. I have the old one, and then I have a brand new camera that is a hard drive camera, so it captures everything on the camera's memory like a computer, and then you can dump it on your computer later. So I have the best of the new stuff, and I have the best of the old stuff. But I love to get some night vision telescopes, and night vision cameras and night vision stuff, and if I had a bunch of money, I would be able to dump more money into it. And they have these UFO detectors and stuff they have all sorts of strange stuff on the internet now.
Yeah, there's actually some people really looking deeply into doing that. We had a talk last week about that. Someone posted on the Skype message board that if you watch eBay, you can pick up some night vision as low as $200 if you keep your eye on eBay. Someone else on the other message board wants to know, is this a full-time thing you do, or do you actually have a job where you work and then you do this as a passion, hobby type thing?
Yeah, I do it. I have a job I have to keep. I have like a part-time job. It pays some of the bills and stuff, and then I do this. I would say this is kind of like a part-time job in itself. I could make it full-time. I could spend more time, uploading more videos, making the website, better. I could spend like 8 hours a day on the websites alone, at making them better and putting more stuff on there and managing them and stuff like that. But I just don't have the time, so I have to, dedicate, a couple hours a week doing the websites, and a few hours a week doing skywatching, and then a few hours, you have Facebook feeds where you have to upload stuff to, and all this other stuff. So it becomes a full-time job,
Right. Yeah, and we talked earlier before the show just for a couple of minutes, and this is not the type of field you want to get into if you want to make a lot of money.
Right, and that's why I was saying, I mean, if everybody listening, like you were saying, UFO people don't like to spend money on UFO stuff, or they don't like to spend a lot of money. So, and I know that, and I, if you love UFOs and you want to keep seeing us put them on our website, and you want to do something to help the field out, I'd say everybody listening, I mean, if you can just at least just donate $1 to us, that would, and people don't look at it, oh, if I donate $1, it's not going to do anything. Yeah, but like if 200 or 300 people just donated $1, we would have the money to reactivate our movie streams and put them back up. We would be able to pay for all of our hosting. We would be able to go buy a night vision camera, because see, at the end of the month, all of my money is going to have to go to paying my rent and keeping the electricity on and paying the water bill and stuff like that. After that, we don't have money for UFOs. So, if you can donate $1, then we might have money at the end of the month. Well, we at least have money to reactivate our movie streams and put them out there. Because right now, all of the video footage of UFOs on my website, you can download it or you can see it on YouTube. But we actually we have like 5 DVD movies that we sell for $20 each, and we actually had all of those movies on our website where you can watch them for only $1. You didn't have to spend $20 to get the DVD. You can just go on there and watch it for $1. But we didn't have enough people doing it, and to host all those movies, it cost $40 a month, and we weren't even getting 40 people to watch them to pay for it. And so we could just get one person to donate the $40, and then we would reactivate them for everybody else. So there's a lot of different ways it can work. But if everybody would just, like you said, can put, just $1, at their favorite, people in UFOs, and, everybody's got a donation button on their website, so, everybody can help. Everybody,
Yeah.
So.
We only have a couple minutes left, just 2 minutes left or so. But one of the things that comes to mind, we were talking earlier about Billy Meyer. And people like Billy Meyer, Third Phase of the Moon, Secure Team 10, all that, they're in it for the money, obviously, and you can't force UFOs. In other words, it's a fleeting thing. It's nothing you can captivate to make money on, and I think people just get frustrated with it and decide that they're going to hoax to try to make money. There's a girl named Sheila Aliens. Sheila Allen, I think her name is. And she was on my show, and she was verbally confronting and interviewing, I can't remember the name of the 2 brothers on Third Phase of the Moon. But,
yeah. I'm familiar with her. I've been on a couple of shows with Sheila as well.
Oh, okay. So. Well, she, basically, I think she told me that they were making several $1,000s a month with those fake videos. So.
Yeah, and I saw the interview where she confronted those 2 brothers, cousins, or whatever their names are, third Phase of the Moon.
Yeah.
And what they do, how they make the money is, where they got that fake UFO video on there, and then they put those AdSense banner ads on there from YouTube, and then after like 1 million people watch it, that ad pops up 1 million times, and that puts AdSense money into their account. And we use AdSense on our videos too, but our videos are real, and we're just trying to recoup the money that we lose on hosting every month, to try to recoup it. And it's funny because.
I got to tell you, we're out of time. I hate to tell you. So real quick, throw your website out there if you would.
Yeah, it's ufosoverphoenix.com, and we got ufosoverphoenix.net, and we have another website called ufofootage.net.
All right, Jeff. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Great. It's been great, and thanks. Hopefully you'll get me on again sometime. I'll be happy to come on.
All right. Excellent. Thanks a lot. Okay, everyone. So thank you for listening. And we'll be on next week. And I don't have the guest secured, so I'm not going to announce who it is. But we'll see you here next week. And I want to thank everyone that helps out with the show. Thank you over at PSN Radio as well. And we'll see you next week. Keep your eyes to the sky.